Hi, my name's Bridget Ferguson. I'm the Deputy Head of Student Wellbeing Services at Bath University, and I'm also a trained sexual violence liaison officer. So in terms of the existing processes for students to report instances of unacceptable behaviour, and in particular I'm talking about sexual misconduct, harassment and violence, we are in the process of changing and improving our procedures, and we've been in that process for about the last 10 months. So we consulted with an organisation called Lime Culture, who specialise in sexual violence policies in higher education. And also following the publication of the Office for Students Statement of Expectations, we very much are following that guidance around the new processes and procedures that we're putting in place. So at the moment, what we have is report and support. So students are able to report anonymously or give their name and request support, and somebody then will follow up from Student Wellbeing Services. So that's a senior member of staff, usually myself, will follow up with the student within 48 hours and basically talk through with the student their various options in terms of support and reporting. And that can be support within the university via Student Wellbeing Services. It can be support via an external agency, so a sexual assault referral centre. We refer to SafeLink and The Bridge in this area. And also talked with the student to see whether they want to report to the police and give some advice about the various processes there. We also talk through processes around reporting sexual violence within the university. So there's a difference between wanting to share that something has happened and actually wanting to begin a process of a formal complaint. And what we do is explain to the student the difference there in terms of what information they share. So I can talk a little bit further about that in a moment. But other than that, essentially students can also just tell any member of staff know to refer students to Student Wellbeing Services, and then they will get the appropriate support there. So in terms of the work that's being done to improve the disclosure and support pathways for students, we have done some work consulting with students about what they understood the university's processes and procedures to be. And one of the things that came back from that piece of work, those focus groups, was that students weren't really that clear about what support was offered and what the processes were. So following that period of consultation, we set up a working group consisting of senior staff and also a student advisory group. And the working group is essentially producing a new sexual misconduct and harassment procedure. And as part of that will be the mapping of what all of the processes are for both reporting and receiving support. So it's very clearly laid out. So that work is due to be completed in September, ready for the new cohort of students. And that will be backed up by a communications campaign to ensure that students are aware of that, and ongoing social media campaign throughout the year to ensure that that's kind of uppermost in students' minds, how and where they can get support and how they can report to the university when something has happened. So one of the things that has arisen is the need to ensure that students are aware of the difference between disclosing an incident of sexual violence and reporting that to the university. And the reason that's important is once the name of another student is revealed in relation to an incident of sexual violence, the university has a safeguarding duty in relation to that. So that means that the university may need to take disciplinary action even if the reporting student was not ready or comfortable with that. So obviously what's very important is to let a student know immediately when they come forward to report an incident of sexual violence that if they are not sure about whether they want this to proceed as a formal complaint or they're not ready to make that decision, then to not share that name. And what we can also do is refer them to an external agency, a sexual assault referral centre. If they feel that they want to disclose the name, they can do so anonymously outside of the university setting. but we make it clear that once the university knows the name of another student that's implicated, that we may need to take action. So we really want to put students in a position of being empowered and at choice to make that decision in their own time, as opposed to being under pressure because they have already said the name of the other person. Staff play a really important role in removing barriers to reporting, essentially by being comfortable and confident to have students come to them with reports of sexual violence. So within student wellbeing services, obviously we are used to receiving those types of report. I'm a trained sexual violence liaison officer, and we're in the process of training other members of staff. In terms of the wider staff body, as part of our consultation process, it became clear that not all members of staff felt comfortable to receive those disclosures because they didn't know what to do with them. So what we've done is make just very, very simple, clear guidance that to reassure the student that they have done the right thing by coming forward, and that they can refer them to somebody that can support them properly, that's been trained, so that they are then referred to student wellbeing services. So that's our very simple message. So staff do feel comfortable and don't feel like they have to hold that report or support the student themselves, that there are members of staff that can do that. And so now staff are aware that they don't have to hold those situations, that they can refer it to student wellbeing services. I think process development and prevention are both really, really important areas around adequately addressing sexual violence within universities. I think that the knee-jerk reaction can be to immediately put in place awareness-raising campaigns, training, so on and so forth around prevention. But essentially, if you haven't got your processes and your procedures right, what that does is raise an expectation that the university can't fulfil. So essentially the process development, the procedures, the mapping of the reporting, the mapping of the support pathways is the foundation on which the rest can be built. So it's not that prevention isn't important. I think it's really important to set a tone around what the culture of the university is. But our current emphasis is getting those procedures and processes really, really solid by September, so we can then, on top of that, put in those prevention strategies, awareness raising campaigns and training, knowing that we've got a solid foundation. I think people underestimate the level of expertise needed to get this right. And actually having external input is invaluable. I mean, the other thing that we're putting in place is we've had some training of senior members of staff around investigating sexual violence cases properly, because again, it's not something that you can just, people aren't equipped to do it unless they've had the training. So all of these things, you know, if you're just kind of making it up as you go along, you're not aware of unless you've had that external input from experts saying, have you thought about this? What about this? You know, what about your panel? Is it trauma informed? You know, all of these aspects. I think the important thing is that students have confidence in the university to handle these kinds of incidents properly, and that's something that needs to be built with students. And once that trust and that confidence is there, and part of that is, you know, developing the proper procedures and pathways, ensuring that students are aware, properly supporting them, having, you know, training in place, the whole piece of work really. Once those things are in place and that confidence has been built, what we'd expect to see, which is counterintuitive, is an increase, you know, a significant increase in reports of sexual violence and misconduct. And I think the mistake can be to think that something is going wrong with, you know, sexual violence is increasing. The reality is sexual violence is already happening, just most of it isn't being reported. So actually it's a very positive sign when students come forward and start reporting, so we can start to address and support all of our students. So I think that's something that universities can feel uncomfortable about as their numbers rise, but actually that's a very, very positive sign that the university is doing something right.